Hello, this is Quick56, and this is episode 3 of my 4 modeling tutorials. And this tutorial, we are doing creative tabs, configs, and recipes. Although we'll probably do configs last. So we'll do creative tabs now. So first of all, in our main mod file, we need to make our creative tabs. So public static creative tabs, and we'll call this tut tab, and we want it to equal a new tut. Well, we'll call it tab tut. That'll be the class name. And this takes a ID, which we'll do a awesome thing that you can do with this, which I don't need to. You can do get next ID. So any other mods, well, as long as every other mod does this, you won't have any conflicting tabs, which is really cool, and it means you don't need a config option for the creative tab ID. And then the second parameter is the name, the unlocalized name. So we'll call this tut tab. And obviously this class doesn't exist, which means we need to create it, and we'll put it in dot tabs. There we go. That'll be our package name, tabs. So we need to add a constructor, which is pretty simple. Doesn't need to have anything in it. But we'll just change this to, so it looks a bit nicer. ID and name. We can get rid of this. Make sure it does extend creative tabs. It should do if you do that first and create it through that way, but if you're doing it manually, it won't. So this simply just returns an item, which will be the icon. So added items blocks dot, we'll do tut item. I don't think you can do actually. Yeah, I don't think you can do blocks, but you might be able to. I haven't tried. Get. It doesn't look like it. Well, yeah, you're gonna have to use items then, it seems. Yeah, you can use a vanilla Minecraft item if you want. All you have to do is do items dot, and then you have all of them here. I think you might be able to make a block, get a block by using an item stack and then getting the item from that, maybe. I haven't tried it, so you can try that out. So now the creative tab, if we run it, you can see that was pretty simple. That took a couple of minutes. It won't take that long if you do it yourself. Well, it shouldn't do. Well, obviously it will if you're following this and doing it at the same time. But it's very quick. Of course, I'm explaining stuff, so it takes a bit longer. Sometimes this launches really slowly, sometimes it launches really fast. There we go. So we'll load up our test world. And we should see there's another page here. And we have, well, you'll see we have item group.tutTab. So that will literally be what goes in the language file. So we'll do that now. So we will open up this, open with text editor, and we'll put a comment saying creative tabs. You might only have one. You probably will, unless you're like me and have loads of items and want to split it up into tons in Kingdom Keys. But most mods generally have one and maybe 2 or 3. So it's just item group with a capital G dot tut tab, and we'll call this tutorial tab. I won't test that, but well, when I test the game later, I'll show that. But that's all for creative tabs. That's really simple. You can do as many as you want, just do it the same way. Really simple. So next we will be doing recipes, which are also quite simple. Well, not 100% simple, but they are pretty simple. So we'll make a new class for this. You can do this in the pre-init, and I think you can also go in the init, but I just put things in the pre-init because, well, unless they don't need to be. So we'll do that. So we'll create a new class again. I'll put this in lib. You can put this anywhere you like, and we'll call it recipes. So this will be where we'll have both. I'll be showing you how to do shaped and shapeless recipes, and also smelting recipes. So we'll get to that. Alright, so make a new method, and this will be init shaped recipes. So this is similar to what I did to the blocks. I just made this class because it looks nicer in a separate class, and it's also easier to find. So if we want to make a new recipe, all we need to do is game registry dot add recipe, and we make a new item stack, and then just specify what we want to make. Let's say we want to make the block, just to spice it up. You can do that. And then we need to do this, so new object with square brackets, and then curly brackets, and this will have a semicolon there. We'll also import item stack, and this is where we actually make the recipe. So I will do this, and then, well, do that in a bit. So we have 3 lines here, and basically if you want, you think about this. I'll make 3 spaces in each of these. I don't think I counted that right. Wait, is that should be 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So each of these spaces here represent a space on the grid, the 3x3 grid. So you can have a recipe that has, for example, like you can specify the different letters. So let's say you want to use I don't know, your block is made out of gold, let's say, a gold block. You could say G, you could put A, you could put 1 if you wanted to, just any character, but letters normally probably going to be the thing you're going to specify. So this will just be, well, we'll do G, 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 and so that will represent our gold blocks. And then to spice this up a bit, we'll have a, well, I'll put a, yeah, I'll put some dye in here to show you how to use metadata things. So we'll put that as D. I don't know what colour we'll do. We'll do like black. Why not? So you see these spaces here. That means you can, if you put a space before that, then that'll be in the middle, and you don't have to put something there. You can also just have 2 lines or 1 line, and then you can have it on any line in the grid. But we're gonna have a 3x3 recipe. If you make it 2x2, you can use it in the inventory crafting as well. So with quotation marks, not speech marks, we will do G, comma, and then blocks dot, I think it's, oh no, it is gold underscore block. So G now represents the gold block, and then in quotation marks again, D. Now what we'll do here, to get the die, we can't just do like items dot die, because that doesn't have any metadata. We need to make a new item stack, and then the amount, which will just be 1, and then we'll make the metadata 0 to make it black. So you can go 1 to 15, well 0 to 15, sorry, and that'll be it. And then, well, we don't want to put that. Then that is, we don't need to put a comma either. So that's the recipe. That's a shaped recipe. So next we will do a shape this recipe. So I will make a new method init shape shapeless recipe recipes even, and then game registry. Now this is really simple. Dot add shapeless. So we have the output and the parameters. So the parameters are the things that it uses. So you can see, I don't know if I mentioned this, I forget, that this is the output item, so that's what it's going to make. If you want to use a custom item or block or whatever in your recipe, you can do that as well. It doesn't have to be vanilla stuff. Anyway, so we'll make the item with this shapeless recipe. So added items.block, not dot blocks, you know what I mean. And then we just do the items. So if we want to do sorry, I need to make this a new item stack. I'll also like to mention, I mean, you did see it here, item stacks can just take an item or block, then the amount, and then the metadata. You can just specify the amount, not the metadata, but if you specify the metadata, you need to specify the amount. So that is those are item stacks. They're very useful if you want to have multiples of items, and also it's also a good way of having blocks and items be kind of the same. Anyway, so new item stack. What should we use? Items dot. It's a smiley face. So obviously we need cookies. And then we can just specify another thing. Of course you can only have up to 9 because there are only 9 spaces on the grid. But you also cannot specify more than 1 item because it doesn't detect stats. Like it will only take 1. So keep that in mind as well. If you want multiples, you have to do it multiple times. And we'll just make a cookie. We'll have a cookie and a diamond. And then that's the recipe. That is really simple. So now we will do smelting recipes. So, oh, okay. Game registry dot add smelting. So you can see how easy this is going to be. You have the input, so new item stack. I don't even think you need to specify it. You don't need an item stack. You can actually see up here. You can see the types they are and what they're called if they are named anything. So that's also a useful thing to know. So added. Yeah. Let's say the item is your ingot and the block is your ore. So added items, blocks, even the block and the tut item. So you get, saying that is an ore, you'd get a ingot, which we will say you get because it's a smiley face ore that gives you a smiley face ingot, although it isn't really an ingot. Then we just specify the amount of XP you get when you smelt. So I will just make this 1F. I honestly don't know. I believe that needs to be an item stack, although I could be wrong. I honestly don't use smelting recipes enough. That probably seems quite bad, doesn't it, considering I'm doing a tutorial. But it's relatively simple. I'm actually going to say now, I haven't done any well, I don't have any smelting recipes in my mod, so I haven't really done them in like a year maybe. That I haven't even looked at them. Like, when I was thinking about doing recipes, I was like, oh wait, whoa. I completely forgot about that. Yeah, that won't work unless we do this. Make sure it's after the blocks and items, because obviously it's not going to get it. If you're using custom blocks and items, they aren't registered before that, are they? So just put it underneath. So recipes dot. So we have to do all three of these. There we go. One thing I haven't mentioned is brewing recipes. Now, I am not actually sure how easy they are to add, because there is not, like, I believe they're kind of hard coded into the game, so you can't really make them without a lot of effort. But if I find out, I might make a tutorial on it. Well, if I find out, I will, because that's probably quite useful information. My FOV's gone back. I didn't even notice before. I'm sure a lot of people don't like Quake Pro, but I do, so deal with it. What's happened? Oh, never mind. I haven't put the stuff in the tab yet, have I? I should do that to show that works. I'll do that in a minute. But I also, look, it has the name now, so that worked. Alright, so we will get a crafting table, a furnace, gold. We'll just get a bunch. This is a really expensive recipe, isn't it? A cookie. Now, it seems kind of silly that you could smelt it and get that, but also craft it. But who cares? This isn't a serious mod at all, because you need a cookie and a diamond to make a smiley face. And we need an ink sac, because that's black dye. So, crafting table. Assuming I didn't screw up anywhere, this should work. And look, there we go, tutorial block. So that's a really expensive, stupid recipe. And to show this is shapeless, we can see, put that anywhere, and we get tutorial item. And then I need to get coal. Coal and tutorial block. And you'll see it's smelting, so that's good. Now, assuming I put that in right, it should give us, yep. I didn't see, I'll see how much XP this gives us. I didn't, well, you can see barely anything. So one, it's probably a good idea to look at the vanilla recipes to see how much, but you can see that looks like about, well, I'll make that larger. That, yeah, one is one of those small bars on the XP bar, so I can't be bothered to count how many, and I have no idea how many there are per like level, but it's also probably different per level, but yeah, base it off of that. So the last thing we have to do now for this tutorial, which has been relatively short. How long has it been? Oh no, 21 minutes, so that's quite a long time. It doesn't feel like that when I do it, so maybe it's me. Last thing we've got to do is the config, which is probably the thing that's going to take ages compared to everything else. Maybe. Because there's quite a lot involved. We're going to have a config file and an in-game configuration, which doesn't work too well, but we'll still have it anyway. It's kind of new to Forge, like it was added, well, in 1.7, or near to 1.7.10. So we're making a configuration here, and we'll be calling it config. Probably quite a suiting name. And then we want to import the Minecraft Forge one. Make sure you import that and not anything else, because it will not work without that. So the next thing we'll do, we'll make the file in a minute, but first in the pre-init, we'll do this right at the bottom. Well, not at the bottom, we'll let the log go after it. So we want to make a new configuration, and this is going to be event, so that, if you call it something else, just make sure it's the same. And then we want get suggested configuration file, and then we got that. Now we'll be calling a method which we will make right under here. You can make it in a different file, but well, first, should we put it in a different file? I think we should. So we'll do that now. We will make a new file which will be, we'll call it, let's make a new class, and it will be called configuration tut. So in here we will put public static void, and this will be called sync config. Now you can call it whatever you want, but sync config is what I call it, because we are kind of syncing the config, as you could say. So in this we want fml common handler dot instance dot register, no, not register, dot bus dot register, and we need to make an instance in here. So I believe we want to do public static tutorial mod, so it's the name of your class, this class right here, and we'll call it instance. and save that now. And then we want TutorialMod.instance. There we go. Then we do the actual config, like all of the stuff. Now this is kind of, I need to explain this in pretty good detail. Basically, let's say you've got something like, well, a recipe. You've got two different recipes. You've got a cheap recipe and an expensive recipe, and you want to enable it or disable it, and people can choose. So you want to make that option. So it's going to be a boolean because it's true or false. You can do ints as well. You can do some other stuff, I believe, although you're probably just going to be doing ints and booleans. I think you can do arrays, but I'm not entirely sure how you do those. I might do that in the future if I find out. But you probably won't need to do those unless you're doing like super advanced configs that are super crazy customization. But anyway, so if you can make, first thing we'll make a string called, well, we'll call it, let's just say recipes is the section. And put it in caps because it's final. It's like anything that's constant. Generally, it is just good practice to put it in caps. So config, which we need to do tutorial mod.config dot category general. So this is like the main thingy, and basically the best way to see this, well, the way this works is that in actual well, we'll look at it. So we need to look in the configuration file. Now, if you look at these, we've got category general, so it's just general, and a splitter is just a dot. So you could actually just do general dot and then the name of your category. So yeah, you could do that, but we're not going to do that because that's a little harder to kind of keep track of. So we want to add the category splitter. So tutorial mod.config.category splitter, and then the name of our category, which we will call recipes. So now we have our category. So in this category, we essentially just need to put everything, well, we will now register, if you want to put it that way, the category. So add custom category comment. Well, that's not registering it, but whatever. So this will, when you put the mouse over it, it will show up a tooltip saying whatever this is. So this will be the recipes one, and then we'll say enable or disable recipes. And then this is where we actually add the config options. So we will say, we'll call this, we'll make a new boolean. We can put this in a separate file to keep track of them. That's what I like to do, but you don't have to. We'll add them here first of all, so you can access them in other classes. Public static boolean. No, it doesn't need to be final. We'll call this cheap recipe. Let's say that. So you know how expensive the block recipe is. We'll make it a lot cheaper. Make it out of dirt and ink sacks instead. So this is gonna equal to false. No, it won't equal anything right now. But we can have a default, which we will make now. In fact, public static final boolean. Cheap recipe underscore. I like putting an underscore after that with default, and that's gonna equal false because that's what we want it to be. We want the expensive recipe normally. So after that we want we don't need to do this, but you can if you want. A string. We'll make this a final because it's not going to change. We just need to basically give it a name. So equals enable the cheap recipe for tut block. So now we have all those, we can... Why is that? Invalid type. Pretty sure you can have... Oh, well... What's wrong? Oh, I haven't given it a name. I'm so silly. Cheap recipe. We'll call it cheap recipe underscore name. See, don't make silly, stupid mistakes like that. I can't believe I did that. So now we want to do cheap recipe equals TutorialMod.tutConfig.get. Just get. You can actually do get boolean, but I like doing it my way. Well, actually we will do this, but we'll do .get first. I don't know why it auto added get boolean, but first thing is the category, which is called recipes. If you just set it to general, it'll just be in the main thing, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we will have a category. So then we want cheap recipe name. Of course, you can actually just type this out if you want and not have that, but it's just like if you have loads with the same description, that's a good way of doing it. And then we want the default, which is cheap recipe default, and then we need to do .get boolean, and then we do the cheap recipe default. So that will make it false. By this will add a config option that's called we'll enable this will add it to the recipe section, and it will be called enable the cheap recipe for tut block, and by default it will be false. And that seems all great, but obviously this has no function. It says it does that, but it doesn't. But we will get to that. And also, to a good a good thing to do is generally have your category above everything that's in that category, so you know what's in what. It's a very good way to organize it, which is what I do. Now, we will do this in the main file here. We need to make a new method called public void on config change. Now, you can course whatever you want, but I'm just going to call it on config change. And then it's config change event. We'll actually get to events in probably the next episode, but we want to do on config change event because these are really useful things, events. Now, because it's an event, we need to do @subscribe event, which I will show these in a lot more detail in the next episode and show you loads of different things you can do in them because they are really useful. So, yeah. Now, what we want to do is event dot mod id dot equals, and then we want to do our mod id, which we can just do reference dot mod id, and then we need to do our sync config method. So that is, if I can type right, configuration tut dot sync config. So whenever it's changed, it does that and syncs it. Alright, so that's how that works. Now, after now we've done. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm not very good at speaking sometimes, I will admit that. We need to do TutorialMod.tutConfig. What am I doing? And then dot has changed, and then we need to do tutorial mod dot config dot save. So that will save the config, which is probably quite obvious because whenever it changes, it saves, as by the names, has changed and save. So that's our config file. Now, one last thing we need to do is configuration tut dot sync config, and then we need to actually give this a function, which honestly isn't, well, if we want to give this a GUI, the next thing we need to do is make a a mod GUI factory, which is a really strange name. It's like a really simple class, which we will do now. We will put this in the lib as well, and we'll just call this tut GUI factory, and this is gonna implement mod GUI. It's not gonna come up, is it? Factory. It needs to implement, not implement. Import that, and then add unimplemented methods. And then we need to make another file which we will call config GUI, and that'll be a class, and we need to return a class. So that, and then these can both be null, and because I don't like that being like that, I will do that. So now we need to make this class, so we will do that now. And this is also a really, well, not as simple, but it's a small class. Gui Config. And this, we need to add a constructor, which it will probably say, so I'll just do that now. And this will take GUI screen, and we'll just call this screen. And then a super, which will have screen, then new config element, and then not with that, and then tutorial mod.config dot get category, and then configuration dot category general, and then dot get child elements. Then you can see this is quite long, but then a name, which we will just do tutorial mod. You could probably just use, well, we'll do reference dot mod name false GUI config dot get abridged config path, and then tutorial mod dot config dot toString, and that is all. You know, that really short line there. You could probably also do this to make it look a little less long, but you don't have to. So that's a really, really long name, but, well, super, I should say. And that is almost everything, but we also need to do the the actual function of the config option, because right now it is really useless, like really useless, and that's not great, because, well, you don't want to put it true and false is all great, but when it doesn't actually do anything, what's the point? Alright, so we'll do that now. So in our recipe class, we want to disable this recipe if the cheap recipe is true. So we'll add that, then Control A, Control I to indent it properly, and we want to do configuration tut dot cheap recipe. So if this is not true, then this will happen. Else, and we'll just copy this because it's quick. We will do. We won't bother changing the letters because you don't need to. Blocks.dirt. Now, if I've done this all right, hopefully I did. It shouldn't. Well, by shouldn't I mean it should work. So we will. Okay, it didn't, and I think I know why. Let me just. Is this? Oh, I think I know what this is. I know what the problem is. We need to do, if I'm right, in the init, where's the init? Here it is. We need to do fml common handler dot instance dot bus dot register instance. Okay, that didn't work, and why didn't it? So hard to read this in this black background, this blue, but that's a null pointer. Why is it? Yeah, see, it's... Maybe I should do... I don't know why it's doing that. So this is the fun of it, isn't it? Oh, I forgot a really important thing about instances. We need to do @mod.instance and then reference.modid. Is that running? Yes, it is. So how long has this video been? 47 minutes. Oh my god. Yeah, there we go. I probably didn't need to launch that, did I? If we go in mods, we should see here... No, okay, that didn't... I forgot something, didn't I? Of course. Well, we should see the file at least. So if we go to... well, I'll just go to the desktop because that's where it is. We go in here and go in the Eclipse folder. We'll have the config file, and look, we have tut.cfg. And look, recipes, which is our section, our category, and then a description of it. So enable or disable recipes. And then we see enable the cheap recipe for tut block equals false. So you can change it here, and it says B because it's a boolean. It will say I if it's an int. So ints are very, very similar, just with ints instead of booleans. Pretty simple. So you can do that for like IDs for things, although there aren't too many IDs you'd change, because there aren't blocks or items anymore, like IDs. Well, there are, but not. If that makes sense. Which it probably doesn't. So that's... If we... I probably shouldn't have closed that. If I just change it here. Now, some things won't even change in the GUI config, and that's why it's kind of a good idea to change it in the file a lot of the time. Like, anything to do with blocks and stuff, you probably do that in the file, because once it's launched, they can't really be changed. So if we set this to true now, we'll fix the GUI config in a sec. Well, once I show you this. So that's launched, hasn't it? Yes, it has. Alright, so if we now... This is reset again, hasn't it? If we now go back into Creative, and do it dirt, and ink. And then put that like that. That didn't change, did it? Now, why didn't that change? Okay, I've broken something, and I'm very sorry about that. I'll be back in a sec. I will see what I've done. Alright, I think I have figured out what's the problem. Well, at least with the GUI. We need to make this, we need to add this to the... this is in the wrong place. We need to add it to this section, to our @mod, and it's GUI factory, which will, if I'm not completely terrible at typing, see it. What am I doing? Dot, and where have we put it? We put it just in lib, so lib tut GUI factory. And as long as I type that right, yes, there we go. So now we have recipes, which is true here, which is always a good sign. You can set that to false, or true, and you can reset to default. There's some pretty cool things you can do in the actual GUI, but not all this works. Well, when the game's running, not everything can be changed, so keep that in mind. Sometimes the options won't. Now, I think the reason it's not doing that is because the change in because you have to actually click the exit button. I'm just gonna get a lot of ink sacs and a lot of dirt. I probably shouldn't have done that. So if we so that is still broken. I might have made a really silly mistake. Let's see. So if that should be dirt. But then maybe it's because these need to be after the config. Let's see. Honestly, with configs, it's kind of like one of those things, once you've got it set up, you don't ever really do it again unless you're making another mod. And because of that, I'm a little bit rusty. So, let's try this now. There we go. So, that actually did work. You need to make sure your recipes, well, anything that's you want to change, you should probably put this at the top, actually. Me being a bit silly there. Anything that you need to change needs to go... Why did... No, oh, I'm just blind. So everything underneath that will now work. So... that's a really silly mistake. That's something that could really break stuff if you don't remember that. So that is it for the tutorial. I know this has been really, really long, but hopefully this helps. And next episode we will do, I think we will be doing 3D models. We'll do both items and blocks, and some rendering stuff, hopefully. And well, in fact, I won't do blocks. I'll do that in a separate episode where we'll do containers. Well, we'll do containers, then we'll do 3D models. Okay. So that is all for now. See you in the next episode.